Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
Oh, that's real original.
Bite me.
No.
I know you guys probably missed us last week.
It wasn't my fault.
It was definitely my fault. Well, technically, it was my wife's fault, or even further down the line, it's my son's fault. I welcomed a 7-pound, 6-ounce, 20-inch long baby boy into the world last Tuesday, and I make no apologies for missing last week's episode.
None needed.
But I do appreciate y'all coming back after we missed a week. And I hope you guys want to go and take a look at our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages. We've got Backwards Histo on Twitter. We've got Backwards History Podcast on Facebook. Instagram at Backwards History. And give us an email at the Backwards History or Backwards History Podcast at gmail.com. Don't forget to go check out Mike Ramsey Music. He's the creator of our intro and outro. Mm-hmm. If you notice any difference in the sound today, we've done a little bit of restructuring in our podcast studio, but we are going to be doing some changes, so you may notice a little bit of sound differences over the next few weeks. Mm-hmm. Bear with us. Mind our dust.
Got some growing pains to get through.
Right. Well, today we want to talk about little known facts of U.S. presidents up to and including Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. So there'll be early American presidents we're talking about today, and I'm going to let Kevin take the reins for this one from the start.
I think you will. With this being a election season and President's Day having passed us by not too long ago, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to give our listeners a little bit of facts, little known facts at that, about our early presidents.
Yeah, it passed me by real well. I was real upset I didn't get that day off.
You and me both. Anyway, we'll go back to our first president, Mr. Washington himself. I believe Will and mine is both our favorite president.
Oh, yeah. We even got little George over here, little pop figure of George Washington on the desk here.
All right, always keeps us on the straight and narrow. Now, George Washington, while many things are known about his life, one of the little known facts is he was actually a whiskey maker and made quite a lucrative living off the making and selling of whiskey.
He was also a hemp farmer, but I digress.
Well, a lot of the founding fathers were. Hemp was used for manufacturing mostly.
Well, I mean, hemp is used for manufacturing. You cannot get high off hemp.
In case you didn't know.
Case you didn't know. Apparently, a lot of our legislators and governors, Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant, doesn't know you cannot get high off hemp. Or maybe he does, and he has a lot of lobbyists involved in textiles, cotton, and lumber.
Paper. Well, a little foreshadowing, something we can cover later. Yeah.
Or maybe me just taking a stab where I can, like I usually do.
Get it in where you can. Moving on to the second president, I was a little shocked. I read an article a few weeks ago. Many Americans, high school students, didn't know who the second president was. It's John Adams, and he and Thomas Jefferson were both friends and professional rivals. They both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826. Jefferson went a few hours first.
It's an ironic day for a U.S. president to die.
Two of them
U.S. presidents to die. That's very ironic.
That's one that's just like the odds of that happening have to be astronomical. But yes, two presidents. Same day, just hours apart.
Well, wait.
Same day. It was 1826. They died on the same day.
So who was the sitting president? Were they both ex-presidents at the time?
Oh yes, they had both served there. Yes, 1826. Let me see. Not really sure who, right off the top of my head, but they had already served their terms. And
okay.
Yeah. Now, another fact that ties into both Adams and Jefferson was they both took a trip to England to Shakespeare's house, and committed robbery by stealing pieces of his chair as souvenirs.
Could it also be vandalism?
I think you could throw in vandalism there.
Right.
Yeah, they took pieces of his chair as souvenirs.
Felons in chief.
Felons in chief. Moving on to our fourth president, James Madison. Again, a president that's not very well known. Usually just named by itself. That dude was president. Was actually Princeton's first graduate student, given that the universities hadn't been around very long in the United States, with the exception of one or two. He holds that distinction as well as being president. So we move on to John Quincy Adams, another lesser known president who had a this one just makes me laugh every time I think about it. Every morning he liked to go for a swim in the Potomac River, which I guess isn't uncommon for people who, take a few laps. However, he liked to do it,
naked as a jaybird.
That's it. You go skinny dipping almost every morning.
Naked.
Now, this is before we had the Secret Service. So you could, on a good day, you could walk by and see the president swimming nude in the Potomac River.
See, that would probably make national news at this point.
That'd make world news. This thing, hey, is that the president? We move on to our next president, a man who has been in the news a little bit with how our current president seems to admire him a lot, and that's Andrew Jackson. Now, Andrew Jackson was known to have a temper. In his life, he's known to have had over 100 duels. Now, typically back in the day, a duel was just, you've insulted my honor kind of thing. I challenge you to a duel. And most of the times the men would show up, and it was just a show of good faith if you showed up. And most of the time they do their paces and they just fire in the air. Well, not Andrew Jackson.
Andrew liked to shoot people.
Andrew before he was president, he did shoot a man in a duel who died. So yes, the president actually killed a man before he was president. Now, a lot of his duels resulted from his wife's honor being insulted. There were vicious rumors circulated that she used to be a prostitute, and that Jackson actually stole her from her previous husband. And it gets murky at best with details due to all the...
Wait. So if she was a prostitute and he stole her from somebody, wouldn't that have been her pimp?
Well, if she was a prostitute, I guess so. But yeah, he was in over 100 duels. Just kind of let that sink in real quick.
And that was both saber, or probably rapier at that point in time, saber and sword and pistol.
Right. Just think about the number of times you got so upset that you challenged a man to a duel to the death, more or less.
Well, can we confirm that those were in fact duels that he started, or they were just duels that he was involved in?
Well, certainly ones he was involved in. I'm not really sure the numbers as far as the ones he initiated, but given that he was in over 100, I'm sure that number is rather high. I would think after a certain point, people would just stop talking to him. Like, that dude's crazy. If you insult the color of his, wallpaper or something, he's going to challenge you to a duel. But yeah, a bit of a temper on that one. So we move on to another lesser known president, and that's Martin Van Buren. Now, he holds a distinction that no other U.S. president can hold. And that's he was actually the first president who was a U.S. born citizen. Meaning that before him, everyone had been a British subject prior to the revolution and the United States being founded and formally recognized as a government.
Because even at that time, you had to be 35 to serve as president, right? Correct? Yeah.
So he holds a distinction of being the first president who was actually a U.S. born citizen. So we move on to probably our most long-winded president and shortest term, That'd be William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison was known as a very passionate speaker. So much so that on his inauguration, he gave a 3-hour-long inauguration speech in the cold rain. And shortly after there, contracted pneumonia and died 31 days into his presidency.
That's what you get for running your mouth for 3 hours in some cold rain. That's your own fault,
that is
brother.
Your own fault on that one. I don't know if I could talk for 3 hours straight. Like, I just don't think I have that much to say. And that's coming from a podcaster.
That's why we keep these things to 20 minutes.
I'm just thinking to myself, what do you have to talk about for 3 hours?
I mean, anybody who knows me personally knows that I could probably run my mouth for 3 hours, but I don't like people enough to talk for 3 hours.
That's me. I'm just like, I'm straight to the point and done.
I don't want hundreds of people in that time period, because now it would be thousands of people at a presidential inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want thousands or hundreds of people staring at me for that long. I'm going to say what I got to say and go home.
I am curious, like, how many people actually stay the entire time? Because I imagine it'd be rude to get up while the president's speaking, like, and just walk off. Or how many other people caught pneumonia because he kept them out in the rain all the time. But yeah, he holds the distinction of having the shortest presidency. 31 days. And then go. Which leads us to his vice president, John Tyler, taking over. Now, he holds the distinction of being the first vice president to assume the office after the sitting president died. At that time, it was unclear as, well, do we need to have another election? Does he just take over? What's going on? So there's a little working out that had to be done there. But what really sets Tyler apart from other presidents is he has 2 living grandsons currently. And you're probably thinking to yourself, how can the 10th president of the United States still have living grandchildren in this day and age? Well, he had the most children of any president. He had 15 children in his lifetime. This man was having children well into his golden year.
This man was 60 years old or more, still getting business handled.
But how is this amazing fact is true is he had 2 wives. His first wife he had 8 children with, and his second wife he had 7.
That's crazy. I have 2 kids, and I'm about to go nuts. I can imagine 8 with one. You said 8 with one, 7 with the other?
8 was the first, 7 was the second.
Oh my God.
I just kind of feel bad for his wife. Like, I know that was kind of common back in the day to have a lot of children, but I mean, at some point you gotta say enough's enough.
That's crazy.
But so his children, kind of like their father, also had children late in life, well into their golden years, and so that's how, when you start, that's how the 10th president of the United States lineage is still going on today with just his grandchildren.
Is Betty White one of his grandchildren?
No, surprisingly enough, she's a little too young.
A little too young.
No, his current grandchildren, I believe, are in their 70s, maybe the early 80s.
So nuts, man.
But they're blessed with long life, and they like to reproduce.
Now, I wonder if you told the 10th president of the United States that he would have grandchildren alive in 2020.
Right.
He would have thought you were insane.
He probably would have. And especially back then with the life expectancy a lot lower than what it is now.
Oh, God, yeah.
But, and sometimes, the truth is stranger than fiction.
You said sometimes?
Sometimes.
All the time.
So moving on to our next president, Franklin Pierce. Now, very similar to Andrew Jackson, had a bit of a criminal record himself. He actually ran a woman over with his horse. Now, this is ironic because as later on, the charges were dropped because there wasn't enough evidence.
That horseshoe print on her forehead wasn't enough.
I don't know who goes around claiming someone ran them over with their horse when they didn't actually do it.
No. Did she die?
No, she's fine.
Oh.
I mean, she lived. I don't know if she was fine, but I mean, I've never been trampled by a horse, so I'm not really sure how it feels. I imagine not
that's
good.
That's not an experience I really want to have.
But I just find it funny that, we're going to drop these charges. There's just not enough evidence.
Now, was this while he was president or prior?
I believe it was prior.
Oh,
But,
okay.
but still, it's one of those things of, how much evidence do you need? Like, was there no witnesses or... I just... So moving on, we got James Buchanan, or our bachelor president. Mr. Buchanan never married. And I believe his niece took over duties as first lady during his term in the White House.
Was he from Alabama?
No. If I remember correctly, he was engaged to a woman, but she died before they got married. And he just never, I guess met anybody else.
I get it.
But has, driven some people to, think certain things about Mr. Buchanan. But so I think we'll wrap up with Honest Abe at number 16. A lot is known about Abraham Lincoln just because of all the things he did during his presidency and the massive impact it had on the country as a whole and in parts, I suppose. But before he was president, Abraham Lincoln was actually a wrestler. Now, it's not like professional wrestling we have today with, the choreographed moves and the big arenas and pyro and all that, but just basic, grappling style wrestling. And in 300 matches, Honest Abe was only ever beaten once. That's quite a record there.
Was he using the senton bomb off the turnbuckle? Or the Stone Cold Stunner or People's Elbow?
I would love to see him do it.
Right? Love to see the dude in top hat running around. Just like nothing but a top hat and that like Speedo thing they used to do. Oh my God.
I imagine him walking around like with his suspenders on and everything. You got to keep the hat on though. That sells the whole ensemble, right?
The hat and the beard.
The hat and the beard, and just imagine he give you like a Clint Eastwood style stare, like. But yeah, Honest Abe, he's actually in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, for his incredible record of 301.
Is he really in the Wrestling Hall of Fame?
There's a Wrestling Hall of Fame. Now, there is the WWE Hall of Fame, which honors professional wrestlers, but there's actually a Wrestling Hall of Fame that's, I believe, more like collegiate style wrestling.
We're talking like Greco-Roman,
you're
wrestling.
Trying to pin dude to the mat,
like high school wrestling teams do, yeah.
Honest Abe's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that sounds weird to us now because we associate wrestling with like professional staged wrestling, like the show style wrestling, whereas there's actually a sport of wrestling, which, in certain areas of the country, certain schools and stuff don't have wrestling as that's not really a thing down here.
No.
We don't. Like my high school didn't have one. Right, if it's not football, it's nothing.
But those are the first of really. We start with the founding fathers and count up to the Civil War. Those presidents, you kind of lose a lot between the first President Washington and then Lincoln at 16. A lot of those presidents just don't get a whole lot of attention.
Right,
but they certainly did live interesting lives. So, shine a little spotlight on them.
And there's a lot more presidents that you never hear about. We've had 45 presidents. Donald Trump is the 45th president of the United States, and we talk about maybe 20 of them.
Yeah.
There's a ton of them that you never hear about.
And like I said, them mostly by name alone.
Right.
That dude was president at some point. And that's about all people really know.
It's usually wartime presidents we talk about.
Right. And as the old argument is it the man or is it the moment that made the man? Like Teddy Roosevelt says in Night at the Museum, some men are born with greatness, others have greatness
thrust upon them.
Yeah. So a lot of historians argue are they a product of the time or are they really these great leaders? I guess, different people handle things differently, but it's an age-old argument, I suppose.
Like would W be a name if it wasn't for 9/11.
Right.
You know, I got to poke that bear.
Every time.
But we do want to get into some of those lesser known presidents at some point that
absolutely.
you never hear about.
People who've held the highest office in the land.
But you never hear anything. You never know what they did. You never know how they may have shaped the life you live today.
All right.
But as always, we don't want you to take our word for any of this. We don't want you to take us for experts or take anything we say as facts. We're just two dudes and a microphone. So we want you to form your own opinions, do your own research, and as always, trust but verify.